Somewhere out beyond the western edge of the old world is said to stand a wonder of our time, a statue hundreds of meters high of a masked woman draped in military gear, less ceremonial than suited to action in the field. Nothing else around for uncounted miles of ocean, only the lofty figure, wind, weather, ocean. Her facial expression, hair and brow at their forbidding height undefined, an open-work visor of some darkly corroded metal protecting, some say hiding, her identity, though now and then aircraft at this altitude have reported glimpses of something like a face behind the mask, more specific and somehow more familiar than faces commonly found on public statuary, keeping a direct gaze at the viewer as if she's about to speak, like somebody we knew once, a long time ago. How is it possible for a story to end? Hicks McTaggart, the protagonist of Thomas Pynchon's new novel Shadow Ticket, is a character made almost entirely of abstractions. He's a bogey-like private detective, his dialogue an imitation of movies like The Big Sleep and The Maltese Falcon. His name is a Joycean puzzle, an intertextual reference both to Pynchon's own Gravity's Rainbow and to the metaphysician John McTaggart Ellis McTaggart. He's a collection of references and cliches and not really human at all, a symbol, a statue, but he becomes human. In classic Pynchon style, Shadow Ticket doesn't resolve so much as it unravels, unable to follow its own threads, the failure of literature to convey the world or even a single understanding of it as far as understanding is possible. Like Samuel Beckett always says, What is the word? Seeing all this here. Folly for to see what? Glimpse, seem to glimpse, need to seem to glimpse. A faint afar away over there, what? Folly for to need to seem to glimpse a faint afar away over there, what? What? What is the word? What is the word? If I fail to mention this detail in its proper place, it is because you cannot mention everything in its proper place. You must choose between the things not worth mentioning and those even less so. For if you set out to mention everything, you would never be done, and that's what counts, to be done, to have done. You would do no better, at least no worse, to obliterate texts than to blacken margins, to fill in the holes of words till all is blank and flat and the whole ghastly business looks like what it is, senseless, speechless, issueless misery. How do we become human? How do we understand that we are human? What differentiates, individuates us? In Malloy, Beckett runs a double narrative. For the first half, Malloy, presumably, narrates his journey from not being in his mother's room to being in his mother's room, obsessively detailing whatever seems important at the time, and running off into a million diversions. In the second half, Morin, presumably, writes a report to his superiors in a sort of private detective agency about his journey to find Malloy. Malloy creates his self-identity through objects in his possession and through patterns of thought and through ailments of the body. His crutches, his bad leg, either left, right, or both, his bicycle, his coat, his obsessive detail, his peculiarities make Malloy Malloy. Morin finds Malloy by becoming him and becomes him by acquiring the same objects, patterns of thought, and ailments of the body, and this makes Morin Malloy. In postmodern fiction, genre becomes an expressive tool to merge and bend as the work demands. Shadow Ticket is a postmodern detective novel, and its hero is a postmodern detective. The novel's plot follows a similar progression as Gravity's Rainbow. It begins in one location, Milwaukee in this case, and establishes its major themes and central character. Then it transplants that character into another setting, in this case Budapest, and leaves him there, unraveled and alone, struggling against the day to survive and retain a semblance of meaning in his life. In Gravity's Rainbow, Tyrone Slothrop is undone by the machinations of them and the counterforce, lost forever, listlessly wandering the zone. The last time we see him in the novel, he is at Hicks's garage, note the name, and the last line in Slothrop's story is, "It may be too late to get home." For the last act of Shadow Ticket, Hicks McTaggart comes to discover that each mystery is full of mysteries, and it's too late for him to go back now that he's started. He will be drawn further along the mysteries, unable to solve any of them, adrift in Europe forever. His last scene is a telephone conversation with his mother, who works in a rocket factory in the US shortly before the Second World War. Who is this, and it better be good? It's Hicks. Who's this? Hicks, what the hell? Ma? Last time I checked, how about you? Where are you? Better not say too much. They listen in. Who? The ones I work for. Same ones? Yep. Ma, can't you see what they are? It's not for everybody, sunshine. But if you decided to quit, keep meaning to look into that. You always said it was wrong. Maybe I didn't know what I was talking about. Maybe it's too late. Just mind what you hear and see in the sky. Ain't likely to be wild geese on the wing. If you're lucky, you'll have some shelter ready to jump into, someplace you can believe for a while will be safer. Please, stay safe. My carload of kisses. You're what? I used to call you that when you were little and we kissed a lot. Carload of kisses. Don't remember. I do. Long time ago. Trying to find it, maybe with just a glimpse of something blowing away into the night. Something it's already too late to chase in this wind-beaten emptiness taking possession of his heart. Well, I lied a little. It's not quite the last time we see him, but it's the last time we see him as a real human character and not as a collection of cliches. Because from beneath the structural trickery and postmodern devices, Pynchon recreates the real world. Beneath the noir detective veneer, Hicks is a real, fictional person, drawn apart by the plot of the book. Another affecting scene sees him departing America and leaving his girlfriend behind. There's a deep sense of melancholy as he drifts away from the life he thought for a while was safe, a world he thinks it's possible to return to that he will never see again. Because the world is too complicated, the world pulls us apart, the world never ends. So how do you end a story? Hollywood gives us a kiss and a closing camera, maybe the most classic symbol of resolution since they all lived happily ever after. Pynchon ends his novel 3 times in the last chapter. First, a German U-boat that was in one of the Great Lakes at the beginning travels to an alternate America with the Al Capone of cheese and exile on board, a capsule of pre-fascist time, moving into a world of infinite possibility. Second, it is braided into the wider context of Pynchon's works with a letter from Skeet Wheeler, a minor character from the opening, who winds up in California where he will presumably father Zoid Wheeler, the protagonist of Vineland, and in the middle of these, with Hicks getting the girl, a quick kiss and a closing camera, and they all lived happily ever after. But nothing is resolved. Everything is hanging up in the air, because that's how the world works. Pynchon writes 3 endings. Because a novel needs to have an ending, even if a story can never end. So what's the point of it all? Hicks's character arc is not one of a detective trying to solve a mystery. It's of a pastiche striving to be real, desperate to exist beyond the constructs of his generic archetype. This is a formal demonstration of the central theme in all of Pynchon's work, our constant struggle to exist as human in a world designed on every level to turn us into fictions, until we're all dead and all that remains is the story written about us, all our possibility codified into an absolute truth. Which brings us, by a commodious oikos of recirculation, back to Howth Castle and environs. The paranoiac critical method allows the subconscious to interpret art. By allowing a work of art into our hallucinations, we discover within it and within ourselves that which would not otherwise be revealed. Using the paranoiac critical method, I have created this model of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake. Sham was a sham and a low sham, and his lowness crept out first to buy our foodstuffs. Oh, the lowness of him was beneath all, up to it, sunk to. No liked by liked, fire water, or first served, first shot, or well-earned gin, or honest blueberry beer, either. Oh dear no, instead the tragic jester saw himself wavingly sick of life on some sort of a rhubarberous, moundering, yellow-green, funkle-blue, windigate, dye-dyeing applejack squeezed from sour grape juice. Would anyone short of a madhouse believe it? The house O'Shea or O'Shane, quiver piano, known as the haunted ink bottle, no number Brimstone Walk, Asia in Ireland, as it was infested with the raps, with his pen name SHUTC scraped on the doorplate, and a blind of black sailcloth over its wan Fwingshog, in which the sole contracted son of the secret cell groped through life at the expense of the taxpayers, dejected into day and night, with Jesuit bark and bitter bite, calico habits of Zolfer and Escobiolano, by full and 40 ecclesiazanos every day, and everyone's way more exceeding in violent abuse of self and others was the worst, it is hoped, even in our western playboyish world, for pure mouse farm filth. Then pious Amos conformant to the fulmen infirmary which enjoins on the tremulous travailing that, when the call comes, he shall produce nycthomerically from his unheavenly body in no uncertain quantity of obscene matter, not protected by copyright in the United Stars of Aurania, or indeed bedewed and bedung to him, with his double die, brought to blood heat, gallic acid on iron ore, through the bowels of his misery, flashy, faithfully, nastily, appropriately. This Ession Menshevik and the first till last alchemist rode over every square inch of the only fool's cap available, his own body, till by its corrosive sublimation and continuous present tense integrity slowly unfolded all merry voicing cycle-reeling history, thereby so reflecting from his own individual person life unlivable, transaccidented through the slow fires of consciousness into individual chaos, perilous, potent, common to all flesh, human only, mortal, but with each word that would not pass away the slid self which he had squirt-screened from the crystalline world, waned, chagrin old, and Dorian grey air in its diadem. This exists, that is it, after being said, we know, and double take double, and dull aval dog, aldenable. So, perhaps, narratively assassinating, after all, and Arclast or Arclist on his last public disappearance circling the square, for the death fete of St. Ignatius Poison Ivy of the fickle crowd, upon the sixth day of October, Philip our king laying low, and brandishing his bell-bearing stylo, the shining keyman of the wilds of change, if what is sauce for the zassy, is Zeus for the zazziness, the blonde cock, who though it was ink, was out of his depth, but bright in the main. To Joyce, following Aquinas, art is that which we leave behind, which we become and live through forever. In this episode, Shem the penman transforms his low sham of a life into transcendent art by literally writing onto his body, creating that which is ALP's letter, which is the wake, which is the giant Finnegan who wakes. But Joyce also frames this as an act of masturbation. The pen is phallus, ink is semen, and sublime art and meaning is orgasm. The self is centered in the creation of individual identity, and that identity rejoins a individual one, is translated and retranslated until the end of the world. In Pynchon, identity is constantly under threat from systems of power. History is created by the strangling of infinite possibility into a real version of events that happened, a narrative made to make sense of the world and to uphold power within it, a honing in, going ever forward towards the zero of annihilation, Shem's letter written to uphold the military-industrial complex. So, in the midst of all this, what does Pynchon suggest we are? What does life really mean? We become human by the process of living. Through the machineries of greed, pettiness, and the abuse of power, love occurs.